Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really wild series of allegations. They start with a local food program in Minnesota and, according to one source, spiral into a $9 billion international conspiracy.
Okay, let's just dive right in with the number that kicks this whole thing off. $9 billion. That's the amount the source we're looking at alleges was siphoned from U.S. taxpayers, all through a single fraud scheme based in Minnesota. And just to wrap your head around how huge that number is, the speakers claim that the total fraud from this one state operation is actually greater than the entire gross domestic product of the nation of Somalia.
So where in the world does a claim like that even come from? Well, the story starts with a federal program, one that was designed to feed kids during the COVID-19 pandemic.
And right at the heart of this whole narrative is a nonprofit called Feeding Our Future. Their job on paper was to take federal money and use it to provide meals for children who really needed them.
But here's the core allegation from the video, that this nonprofit and a bunch of other groups it worked with basically created a ghost network. They claimed they were feeding millions of children who, according to the source, just didn't exist, letting them pocket huge, huge sums of federal money.
But the story doesn't end there, not by a long shot. The source alleges that this whole scheme wasn't just possible, it was enabled, and maybe even protected by some very prominent political figures in Minnesota. The first politician they name is U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar, and the claim isn't just that she was aware of the scheme, but that she was actually instrumental in getting it off the ground.
And this quote right here, this is really their most pointed accusation. They claim that Representative Omar didn't just let the system be abused, but that she actively taught people how to exploit it. Now, to back this up, they point to a few things. They claim she wrote the original legislation without the right kind of guidelines to prevent fraud. And as another piece of evidence, they point to a $1 million earmark for a substance abuse clinic that they make a point to say was located inside a restaurant.
Next up, the source also implicates Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz. And here the allegation is that he wasn't just negligent, but that he was an active participant in letting the fraud keep going. And the claims they make against the governor are pretty severe. The source says he actually suppressed state employees who tried to blow the whistle on what was happening. They also bring up an incident where the Minnesota state flag was temporarily replaced with a Somali flag at an event, which the speakers use as evidence of the governor's, misplaced priority.
Now, according to the source, this wasn't just about a few people getting rich. They allege the money was part of a really sophisticated laundering operation that had a very specific and pretty troubling final destination.
The video lays out this specific four-step process. First, the funds are stolen. Second, they're turned into cash and packed into suitcases. Third, and this is a big one, couriers allegedly fly out of the Minneapolis airport every single day with as much as $1 million. And finally, that cash gets delivered to the terrorist group Al-Shabaab.
And here's where they really try to highlight what they see as a massive double standard. They contrast how you, an ordinary citizen, might have cash taken by law enforcement, while these alleged couriers, they claim, are just waltzing through airport security with suitcases stuffed with money, completely unchallenged. So this is the real bombshell of the whole thing. The video alleges this isn't just theft. It's the financing of terrorism. They claim that the money being siphoned from Minnesota taxpayers is now one of the top ways that Al-Shabaab is getting its funding. For a scheme this massive to actually work, the source argues it would have to be more than just a handful of corrupt officials. It would require an entire system just looking the other way. And this quote pretty much captures their entire theory. They believe the silence is bought and paid for, and that the corruption goes all the way up and down the chain of command, all thanks to a network of bribes. And from there, they start casting a really wide net. They're alleging that everyone from TSA agents and local city officials, all the way up to the Department of Justice, is complicit in this, either through corruption or what they call a slow and totally inadequate response. The mainstream media also comes under fire here big time. The speakers claim that legacy news organizations are basically in on the grift and completely drop the ball on investigating, leaving the real detective work to independent researchers online.
So if you're faced with what they describe as a completely corrupt system, what's the solution? Well, the speakers argue that the traditional paths to justice have failed, and they propose something else entirely. Their proposed solution is really simple and direct: exposure. They believe the only way to tear down this alleged network is to drag every single detail out into the open, into the public light, leaving these people with nowhere left to hide.
And this all leads to their final call to action. They're basically urging viewers not to wait around for official channels, but to become citizen investigators themselves and expose corruption wherever they can find it.
And that leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. This case, at least as the source presents it, really highlights this growing gap between the official stories we hear and these powerful, often viral claims made by citizen investigators online. And it forces us to ask, where's the line between accountability and conspiracy?